Morning. So it got really cold last night. It's like a nice day yesterday, and then, wow, middle of the night got really cold. I like a nice cold space to sleep in, and I have a cabin all by myself. It's actually really peaceful since I have 3 kids that whenever I'm at home, one of them wakes up in the middle of the night freaking out every night. So this is like a really nice, peaceful night for me. At least it was supposed to be. And went to bed thinking it'd be nice and cool. It wasn't cool. It was freezing when I woke up. So I woke up like 4 in the morning, curled in a little ball, needed to go to the bathroom, walk in there, grab the hair dryer, because I brought a hair dryer with me to make sure I look good in my selfies. So using that to heat myself up a little bit. So that was exciting. And then I woke up this morning to have my muscle milk because I'm a star baseball player and I need to keep up my muscle mass. And it was frozen. Like it's still frozen hours later. Like, what is this stuff made of that this happened to it? So maybe I shouldn't be drinking that. But so anyway, we are now on our second session here. And hopefully you guys are nice and lively after a great time of worship. And we're just going to go ahead and dive into it. Last night we talked about how when we have a change of identity, a new set of actions comes along with that. And the most important change of identity comes from God working inside of us to transform us. When we realize that Jesus died for our sins, that I'm a sinner, I couldn't do anything about it. He died for my sins. He was buried, he was raised, he was seen. The objective reality of that, when we accept that, changes everything about us. And we shouldn't be in that weird middle zone where we're just the fan. If this is true, which I'm pretty sure most of us in the room believe it's true, if that is true, it's not just one more thing you like. It's not just one more thing you follow on social media. It's a thing that transforms every single thing about you. And this morning we're talking about how it changes the way that we deal with the trials and the pain that we deal with in life. As we all know, pain, hard times will happen. And when we have that transformational change of identity that comes with Christ, it changes how we deal with that and the perspective that we see. So back when I was writing this talk, I'm sitting on my couch, and my kids, I actually got a fun little picture of them. This is not from that day, but fun little picture of a couple of my kids. I'm sitting there on the couch like in the zone working on this talk. My kids walk in and they say, "Hey, we'd like some apples. Can you help us get some apples?" I was like, you guys can speak. If you can speak, you can get your own apples, because I'm a good parent. So they walk into the kitchen, and I hear some shuffling and like some feet stomping around, chairs sliding all around. I hear something sounds like feet on top of the counter. I hear like a knife coming out of a block. And I paused for a second, and I thought, wait, they're children. When they want an apple, they want it cut. They wanted my help grabbing a knife to cut the apple, because they're children and they're clumsy and they're competitive and they're stupid. They're children. So I hear, the next thing I hear is more, hear a body falling through the air, thud on the ground, and then a bunch of more kind of like feet scurrying. And that's the story of how I went from 3 children back down to 2. So we all have hard time. So I hear this, I run into the kitchen like, what am I about to see? Which one of my kids has a knife impaling them through their heart? Is the other one mourning the death of their sibling? I run in. My son is laid cold on the ground. Sister's on top of him, ground and pound style, MMA, just bashing his face in. I'm like, wait, what just happened? Like 3 seconds have passed and a fight broke out. What was the knife sound? What just happened? So apparently what happens, daughter runs up on the counter, competing with him in a hurry, grabs the knife, trips and falls backwards, but there was a pile of clothes right behind her. So she falls down, hits a nice cushion there on her back, and then in the ultimate big brother moment, he goes, ha, 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 starts laughing at her. She gets embarrassed and mad, tackles him, and just starts beating him, and then I walk in. It's like, how did so much happen in like 5 seconds? And how was I dumb enough to tell my kids to go grab knives out of the kitchen? So as I tell this story, as soon as it starts to play out and you start to realize, I've sent my kids to grab knives. Immediately like, oh, That's not going to go well. This is a bad story because we know kids do dumb stuff and they're clumsy, and we also know bad things happen. We know hard times happen. And because of that, that's actually the first time I started feeling anxiety. I never really cared when growing up, if something bad would happen to me. Then I had kids and I was like, well, I actually care about them. Maybe I'm not such a bad parent. And I know bad things can happen. And you know bad things can happen. And that's what this morning is about. How do we process through all of that? And for some of you, you've got a pretty good life. So like the worst thing that can happen to you is it's like you went to have your protein shake and it was frozen. Or you went to go have a latte and it was cold. But other people in this room, you've dealt with more pain in just your 15 years of life than some of us could fathom. The amount of things that have happened to you. As we go into this, some of what I say is going to be funny and it's lighthearted, helps us process through the silly stuff. And it's going to get heavy at times because life in a broken world, in a world with sin in it, has pain. And we need to learn how to process through that. Some of you are old enough that you've seen people face the worst of life and been crushed by it and just absolutely lose hope in this world because of the things that have happened to them. And you've also been old enough to see someone face the worst things that can happen in life and come out on the other side of it a better person and come out of it strong and just seeing the best of humanity in the worst of circumstances. There's an incident that happened back in 2006 where a maniac went into an Amish school, opened fire, shot 8 children. 5 of them died. And you just think of what are some of the worst things of society that can happen? Maniac, killing kids for no reason whatsoever. And the part that's just crazy about this story is that within hours, the Amish community gathered together and went to the home, the family of the shooter to make sure that they were doing okay. They just lost their family members, their friends' children, and their hearts were thinking, wow, that person's son just turned out to be sick and deranged. That must be soul-crushing for them. And their thought was compassion in the absolute worst of circumstances. Or I think back, one of my sister's best friends when we were in grade school got cancer in high school. And he battled it and won, and then it kept coming back every few years. Eventually ended up, two of my sister's best friends got married. One of them was the one with cancer. And within 2 years of them getting married, eventually cancer came back and it became clear that he was going to die. And at his funeral, during the service, one of the elements was he'd written a letter to us. As he was facing his death, in that moment, he wrote a letter to his family and friends who would be at his funeral to encourage us that even though the times are hard, he's with his heavenly Father. And while you're sad at the loss of being with him now, it's really a time to rejoice. While facing his own death, he wasn't even 30 years old. And he was thinking of others. What is it that causes someone to think like that? What is it that he had that sometimes I feel like I don't have? I've faced so much smaller things and responded so much worse so many times. And I imagine you have too. Sometimes I wonder, I feel almost like they have this other version of faith that I'm missing or something like that. To lighten things up, because I got pretty heavy pretty fast. There was a door-to-door salesman came to my house about 10 years ago. And normally, by now, I'm old enough that I just don't answer my door when a door-to-door salesman shows up. But I was young and dumb, opened the door, and he goes, hey man, want some magic cleaner? Well, magic cleaner, that sounds amazing. What does it do? He goes, it can do anything. Anything, that's a bold statement. Show me. He goes, let's go over to your driveway. He walks over to the driveway. He goes, watch this. See that spot right there that's disgusting? Thanks for describing my driveway as disgusting, but yes, I do see it. Watch this. Wait. Rub it down. Clean. And it'll stay clean. You can drive skid marks all over it. It'll stay clean for at least 2 weeks. Do you have a shower in your home? Yes. Did you not smell how wonderful I smell? He goes, I did smell. May I see your shower? Yes, stranger. Come on into my bathroom. Walk into my shower. He's like, you see the scum that's on the windows here? Yes, I do that. It never goes away. We've tried everything. Watch this. Sprays it. Wait. Rubs it down. It'll be gone for at least 2 weeks, probably longer, since you probably don't bathe very much. It was like, that's true. I don't. Do you have a dog? I do have a dog. Does it get those eye booger things? It does. Watch this. Grabs my dog, shoots the dog in the eyes. Wait for it. Rub it down. Shh. Clean. Actually, it put makeup on the dog too. So that was incredible. He goes, are you thinking about having kids? We are thinking about having kids. He goes, watch this. Unscrews the lid, slurps it off, and he goes, it even tastes like lemonade. It's perfectly safe. It's like, that is incredible. I want some of this magic cleaner, but I'm also not an idiot, so I'm not going to buy something from a door-to-door salesman until I've Googled you. Can you come back in an hour? He goes, oh, sure. So he leaves. I Google it. It's a scam. This stuff doesn't work. Like, there's no validity to it. And he comes back and like, man, I Googled your company. I'm not playing this game. I'm not going to have you sell me a bottle of lemon-scented water. He goes, oh, fine. He walks up and leaves. And I stop and think to myself, but what was in the bottle? There was something in the bottle that worked, that could actually do that stuff. I watched it happen. I watched him do the little slurp trick. Something can do that stuff. Over 10 years later, every time I tell this story, people are like, but what was in the bottle? I was like, I do not know. It's like a monthly conversation where my wife's like, what was that? How do we get that cleaner? I want that cleaner. And sometimes I think when it comes to our faith, it feels a little bit like someone has something magical that we can't figure out what it is. And that's what we're trying to dig into this weekend, of how do we unlock that for you when it comes to your faith, that you don't feel like everyone else has something better than what you have when it comes to this Jesus thing, but you get the real thing that transforms you from the inside. And specifically, we're going to be looking at what does that look like in light of trials? That when you face the hardest times, you can respond like that friend of mine that before his own funeral was thinking of others in that moment and how to encourage them. So we're going to be back in James chapter 1. All the rest of the talks are in James 1, so you can just bookmark James 1. That's where we're going to be at. Primarily, we're going to be in the ESV today. I used a little bit of NIV because the ESV used a couple words that I was like, I've never heard any of you use that word, so probably not the best translation for your particular vernacular. So we're in James chapter 1, and he says this. He's going to say some weird stuff about trials. He says, James 1, verse 2, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Okay, well, there's quite a bit in a pretty short little sentence there. Count it all joy. The first thing that he says is the appropriate response to trials, the appropriate response when hard times happen is joy. So next time you take a test that you've been studying hard for, that your parents knew you were studying hard for, and you fail it, go ahead and try this one with your parents. Come home. Mom, Dad, I have the best news. They get a big grin on their face because they know how hard you studied the night before. I failed my test. And then they look at you like you've gone crazy, and then it sinks in, you failed. And they start getting mad, and in that moment, you can play theologian on them. Mom, Dad, you need to read James 1:2. You should be rejoicing right now. It is the word of God, and you are in sin. Actually, take that back. Don't do that with your parents. That will go poorly for you. But that's what James says. When you face trials, when hard times happen, the appropriate response is joy. And he continues on with his hot take here of these kind of great wisdom that feels intuitive. Count it all joy, brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. So what he's saying here, not only should you respond in joy when they happen, he's saying they will happen. It is going to happen. You guys are old enough, you've probably figured that out. Bad things happen, that's what we talked about. Saying it will happen. You will be playing Fortnite. You're doing great. You made it to the top 10. You're feeling it. You're thinking, I'm going to get to number 1, and you're kind of waking, you can make it up to the top 5, and then someone shoots you in the back. It's going to happen. You're going to have those days where you have that latte, and it is cold. You're going to get a class that you hate, show up the first day, and none of your friends are in the class. You're going to have that day where your girlfriend breaks up with you via text. Life is going to be hard at times. We know it's coming. And some of it's silly, and some of it's not so silly. And he continues on, and he says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds." Various kinds. It's coming in a bunch of different ways. And that Greek word that's translated meet, it sounds kind of nice. Oh, nice to meet you. The actual word there's kind of like this idea of like falling into, like being in the midst of, like you just are out of control and surrounded by stuff. I'm a movie guy. If you've seen these movies, the Indiana Jones films, inevitably in all the movies, at some point in time, he falls into a pit of snakes or a pit of spiders, and that's the idea. He's in the midst of all of this stuff, and you will face trials, and sometimes you will be in the midst of them, just surrounded by bad stuff happening. So you will be playing Fortnite, thinking you're gonna get number one, get shot in the back. Then you're gonna remember, oh yeah, I gotta go to class. I hate that class, and none of my friends are in it. You're gonna grab your cup of latte that you have at your house because your mom makes those for you every morning as you're playing. This is a weird story. You're gonna drink it, it's gonna be cold. You're gonna hear a little buzz on your phone. You're gonna pick it up. It's your girlfriend breaking up with you. You're gonna step outside to go to that class you don't wanna go to, and you're gonna get shot in the chest with a harpoon gun that you wish you had, but your neighbor got it, not you. So, in the midst of trial. Look, we're going to have those times. It's, like every Tuesday, we all can relate to that story. But we'll be in the midst of trials where they will stack on top of us. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you are like, yeah, sometimes it is hard. I do lose at Fortnite a lot. And some of you, as I tell this story, you can laugh at the jokes, but you feel the real pain inside of it. And this talk, for some of you, is really the talk that matters this weekend because you are in the midst of trials. Right now in life, you're either in the midst of them or you know they're coming, and some of you are right in the middle of it. Like for me, the first retreat like this that I went to, the equivalent going way back 25 years, it's called Wise Eyes at Hill Country Bible Church, Austin. I think Danny Box, pastor of Pflugerville, actually named it Wise Eyes way back in the day, long before you were born. And that January retreat that I went to the very first time, I showed up and my whole life was a disaster because over the previous year, my dad had started having an affair, wouldn't not quit it, so my parents got divorced. Dad moves in with the person he was having an affair with, and they were in the process about thinking about getting married. Eventually they did get married. They went to a drive-through wedding chapel in Vegas, and as you can imagine, that marriage didn't last very long. But my first one of these I went to, my life was in shambles as I was processing the fact that, like, my parents are torn apart. Like, what is going on? First time I was at one of these, that's what it was like. Then, my junior year in high school, 4 days in, it was a Friday, my mom's driving home from work. She's on 183 in Leander, kind of by Seward Junction, driving into Leander. Someone driving the opposite direction drops something on the floor in their car. They lean over to grab it, swerve off the road, overcorrect, and drive straight into the door of my mom's car, right on her side, flips her car over 4 times. They had to air flight her out. Somewhere during that first week, she had a stroke because she was under so much trauma. Her pelvis was smashed, and there were days there we didn't know if she was going to survive. And from even the damage of all of this, to this day, over 20 years later, she still has like unevenness in her legs, so she has like lifts in one of her shoes. If you take one of her shoes off, she actually walks in circles. That's not true. That was just a joke because it was getting too heavy. But she does have lifters because it did serious damage. So jump forward, she was in the hospital for 3 months because of this. She had to relearn to talk because she had a stroke. She had to relearn to walk, to drive. Everything about life, she had to relearn to do it. And then my junior year, I come to the equivalent of this retreat, still called Wise Eyes, and I'm processing through, is my mom ever going to be normal again? Actually, she was never normal, so I was going to be, was she back to her version of normal? Once again, that's a joke because it was getting heavy. Why do I say all this? That's was my experience being at this type of retreat. The weight of the world, like, will I ever get my mom back? There's even more stuff going on. That same semester, right around that time, that marriage that my dad had during the illustration right before that was collapsing, so he got a divorce. Actually, come to think of it, that wasn't a bad thing. I could easily rejoice in that trial. That was a bad life circumstance. But why do I say all this? Some of you are in the midst of that. You're in the hardest things of life. Some of you you can't connect with some of these illustrations because you've had it pretty good. And some of you, this is where you're at. Being here is your escape from the brutal reality of home, whatever that looks like for you. And James is going to give us an idea. How do you process through that? What do you make of it in the hardest times? How do you respond? And he says we should respond in joy. There's like two types of people that respond with joy in the middle of trials. First one, crazy people. Crazy people respond with joy, and these are the types of people that bark at trees. Their biggest trial in their life is that they don't have like a kangaroo patch or something like on the front. Like, why don't I have one? That would be so cool. Crazy people. James is probably not saying, be crazy. That's not where he's going with this. There's a second group of people that know something. People that have like a knowledge of what's to come. Reminds me of a story I saw in my youth. There's this old man with a beard. He was in a laser sword fight with a guy in a black suit that had a big asthma problem. Guy in the big black suit's probably going to win the fight. Old man that can barely move, he's just kind of doing this stuff, realizes he's going to lose, and he says these profound words, "Strike me down, and I shall become more powerful than you could possibly imagine." There's two types of people that can be rejoiceful in face of trials. Crazy people, that's not one we're going for, though some of you are crazy. And people that know something in that trial. They have a knowledge of what this trial really means. One of the trials I faced this past week is last Sunday, my daughter at nighttime got a fever. And so took her temperature, sick. It's like, okay, that's not good because I'm speaking next weekend and I don't want to get sick. And next day she couldn't go to school, starting to feel a little bit better. And we're like, okay, I guess she'll go back to school on Tuesday. Then Monday night, she comes down like 2 in the morning, 104, 105 degree fever. And she's like pale, like, oh. I'm like, oh, this is bad. This isn't just like, oh, just a little night cold. She's sick. So in my house, when someone gets sick, we actually quarantine them in my office because my office has a TV and a little couch thing. So you can put them in there. They can entertain themselves while being away from everyone else. But I'm thinking like, okay, I need to take care of her while she's sick. That's stressful. I need to not get sick myself. Otherwise, Chad would have a bad weekend as he'd have to like surprise do all the teaching for you guys or whatever. So like I'm thinking like, okay, how am I going to take care of her while not getting sick myself? That's the place where I shoot my videos. How I make a living is making videos in that space, and I can't shoot them because little girl is sick in there. Okay, that's a problem. But my son, and I didn't want her to die because, she's like 2 degrees away from dying. So I guess that was kind of stressful too. My son, he has a knowledge that's different. He thinks very differently. So he finds out Tuesday morning, wait, she's still sick and doesn't have to go to school? He's like, Mom, Dad, this isn't fair. Life isn't fair. She always gets sick. I never get sick. Wait, buddy, you're missing how miserable she is. Miserable? She's laying on a couch watching YouTube and playing Xbox all day long in a room by herself while people bring her food and drinks. That is the life. She gets this all the time. I never get this. So anytime she gets sick, suddenly he's like, oh, let me clean up after. He's like grabbing all of her Kleenexes. Like, where's her water bottle? I need a drink of water. Like, no, don't use that. Oh, are there germs on this? I didn't know. She starts puking. He's like, I'll clean that up with my bare hands. Legitimately, every time we quarantine her in that room, we catch him sneaking in. Like, Liam, are you sneaking in there to try to get germs? Yes. Because he knows something. He would gladly face the trials of 105 degree fever because he knows he gets a day of watching TV and playing video games. It's why obviously that's funny when it's him because he's like, no man, you'd be miserable. You don't get it.
But there's a little truth inside of that. He has this knowledge of something that some of us are missing. And so as we kind of move into this next section of the passage, James is going to tell us that stuff that some people know that they'll get in trials that other people miss. So James 1, verse 3, this is where I switch to the NIV. Because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Why can you rejoice in trials? Because they build perseverance. They strengthen you. The word in the ESV, they build steadfastness. That's the word that I was like, I've never heard a middle schooler talk about being steadfast. So maybe use a word that's more on your level. But it builds perseverance. So the obvious example for some of us is the idea of exercise. So some of you are like, exercise? I would never do that. Other of you, you do it all the time. But the idea of exercise is you literally work your body to the point of exhaustion. You work up muscle until it's actually damaged so that it grows back stronger. That's the whole idea inside of it, is that you're actually kind of damaging your body so that it grows back better with greater perseverance in the future. Remember one time, I was super duper skinny. When I showed you that long-haired picture of me yesterday, like literally weighed 80 pounds less than I weigh right now when I got engaged. And I didn't really like that, so I decided to start working out, lifting weights, drinking these protein sludges. And when I was in college, and I remember one day working out and then going to a meeting at the school, and about an hour passed, and sometimes when you work out, that hour passes and then your body just like dies on you, and it's just like limp. And so we have the meeting, and I'm not thinking about it. Like, I walked up the stairs just fine. I start walking down the stairs in front of all of these people in this meeting, and I just like collapsed down the stairs. Like, dude, are you okay? I was like, I'm fine. What do you mean? What would make you think something's wrong? Like, you just collapsed down the stairs. What is going on here? It's like, yeah. I was working out. I was like, I don't think you're working out right. That doesn't seem like that's what's supposed to happen. But in the moment when you're at the gym and you're like lifting weights, and it's like, do 2 more reps, you start like literal acid starts to form in your muscles and it starts to burn. And there's people like, man, I love the burn. I love that feeling. You're like, I don't think you do. I don't think in that moment you actually enjoy the feeling of acid in your muscles burning you from the inside. But you know what that leads to. Or like the one for me, I've started doing cardio this year. I haven't done cardio since I was in middle school. Like, I just no interest in it. I was like, all right, I'm getting older. I should probably make better life choices. So I started running, and every day in the moment, I hate it. Like, my lungs are burning, my heart's beating. It's like, I do not like this. I'm old enough that like my knees hurt, and like my whole body's like, ugh. This is what old age, like everything that old people talk about, and by old people I mean 40-year-olds, they're basically, that's me now. All that stuff that they say, it's all true. Your just body stops working right. And so I'm doing these jogs and I'm feeling all of that, but at the same time, like while I'm here, I'm thinking, man, how am I gonna get a jog and how am I gonna get to do some cardio? Because I know how much better I will feel in the future because I know it will build perseverance. You don't like the acid burning in your muscles. You don't like falling down the stairs in front of people. But you exercise because you have a knowledge of what it builds, what it's leading towards, and that's that perseverance. And trials in our life are like that. For us as people, they strengthen us. They prepare us for more, so we're ready for it. Next one, he says, perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So that first knowledge that you gain in trials is a perseverance. That thing that you grow for the future is that perseverance. Second one is maturity. Maturity. Understanding like better how to function around people. Growing up, spiritually speaking. So one of those things like some of the people we look up to the most are people that face the worst trials in life and come out a better person on the other side or use it to help other people. Reminds me of this gentleman. His name's Bruce Wayne. And when he was young, he's walking down an alley. He got scared watching a play, went into the alley, and then his parents got mugged and killed. And young Bruce Wayne thought, I don't want anyone else to face this. He's like a real rich guy. He went, I've got a bunch of money. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to get real smart, and I'm going to dress like a bat, and I'm going to stop other people from facing the pain that I faced. I'm going to do everything with my life to stop other people from facing this. So why do I say that? Because why are those stories compelling to us? Because when we hear a story of someone using the best of their abilities to help others, that out of trials, out of tragedy, it helps them want to help others, that's inspiring. So even if it's as silly as a guy dressing as a bat with a bunch of gadgets, punching a bunch of goofy clown people in the face, it's weirdly inspiring at the same time, because at the core of it, there's something very human about the idea of a trial, pain, tragedy, maturing someone. And that's one of the things for us as we go through trials. They mature us. They prepare us for life and the hard things that are to come. To move to a serious story, when I was a youth pastor, one of my students killed himself. And Sunday, he was there in class. He was in my discussion group talking with him. Totally normal conversation. Nothing giving any signs that anything was off. And then about 24 hours later, get a phone call from his parents, or from, I guess, the pastor of the church saying, this is what happened, and we need you to be on site. And so, it just shook me. Sort of things that life doesn't prepare you for. And through that, what ended up happening is his parents, who had just lost their son, their hearts were softened by it. And immediately they became some of the most compassionate people I'd ever known. Specifically the dad, who, very much small town Texan, wanted a ranch, a farm, work outdoors, kind of rough around the edges. And then after going through this trial, it just changed him into this kind person that was so concerned about how this was affecting me. Like, I'm the pastor that's supposed to be helping him, but he was the one that was pouring into me. That's crazy. Doesn't make any sense unless you understand that when we put our faith in Christ, it transforms us from the inside. And one of the things that you can gain through trials is maturity. That's one of the things that he gained through it. As we go through this talk, sometimes I've given a version of this talk, teaching this passage and talking on trials, and I've ended it right here. It's like, everybody, pain's coming. You should be happy you're going to face pain, because it means more pain's coming, and you'll be ready for more pain. That'll prepare you for more pain. And that doesn't feel like that's enough. That's not like the most encouraging message. Like, wait, I should rejoice because it's a sign that more bad stuff's going to come? Well, praise the Lord. Let's get the band back up here and sing to that. Like, seems like there's a bit of a gap inside of it. And absolutely, it's true that it builds maturity. But that works for small stuff. It works for little stuff. If your latte is cold and you're getting real worked up about it, you probably need to face that trial and grow up a little bit. My daughter, Karis, she's 1 year old. She'll be walking around with her crackers, and she'll walk up, and she'll hand it to the dog, and then the dog eats it, because she went like this. And then she starts crying because she doesn't have a cracker anymore. Like, she needs, and you have this face of just utter betrayal. The dog ate the crack. Ah! What did you think was going to happen? She needs to learn that lesson. She needs to grow up and mature and learn perseverance. But when you start transitioning to the hard stuff of life, divorce, cancer, death, saying, hey, face this beating so you get to face another beating that'll prepare you for another beating, it's not the most satisfying answer. About 10 years ago was the actual first renew was 9 years and 11 months ago. Different versions of this retreat go back way further, but the first one called Renew was back in 2010. I was actually the person that came up with the name Renew. And for it, we had these skits that we did for each of these sessions with these videos. And so I borrowed my mom's new van. It was literally 1 month old. She had a 1 month old van, and hey, I need a van to shoot these skits. She's like, absolutely, go for it. And me being a genius with my buddies, we decided to shoot the skit, and we drove the van into the field behind Hill Country Bible Church, Pflugerville, the day after it rained. If you don't know, it's acres and acres of just this field. And so we want to just drive into the middle of nowhere, so that's how we'll visualize it. So you just drive this brand new van into the field, and got some pictures of what this looks like. But, oh, that's me. That's if you wonder, what did Sean look like 10 years ago? There it is. One of those great hairstyles. And then there we are, just stuck in the middle of this field. And we're way deep in it. So we called in multiple people with trucks and stuff like, we don't have any cables long enough. Like, we'll get stuck in the mud. We're not idiots. And so by the way I ended up getting out of it was we had one truck in the middle of the mud that was attached to our vehicle, and then one on the gravel that was attached to the other truck. And so it was like this whole caravan of cars being towed. You know, when you face that trial, you know, I learned, okay, don't drive Mom New's van into mud. Actually, as it turns out, don't drive any vehicles into mud like that if it's not a gigantic truck. That's stupid. Especially don't do it at a place where everyone knows who you are and will take your picture and post it on the internet to embarrass you. You know, that matured me a little bit. I learned some lessons about life, about what not to do. Here's the deal. There's actually a reason more important than this story why I remember that day so well. See, I had to leave the van in the middle of the field for about 4 or 5 hours, so a ton of people saw it, because I had to leave to go to a funeral. It was actually the funeral for my friend, Aaron Williams, the person I mentioned earlier, that got cancer in high school, and then before he was 30, died. That same day as this incident happened was his funeral. Story about the van, sure, growing in maturity, but dealing with real life tragedy. There has to be something a little bit deeper to it that James is getting at as to where we're going, as to why we could rejoice in trials. So he's going to continue on and give us that idea. It does go back to that core concept that we talked about last night, about that transformation that comes from the gospel. And he says this, James 1, verse 5, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. Like for me, when I'm in the middle of trials, my first reaction is to ask for escape, clear it out. James says when you're in the middle of trials, don't just ask God to take it away, ask for wisdom. So what is wisdom? Wisdom is an understanding of how reality works and the ability to navigate it well. So we're all born fools. We're all, children, it's real easy. I'm in that phase of life where perpetually I see my kids doing things that are insane. Now that, like I mentioned yesterday, we have a puppy in the house running around and that poos and pees everywhere, and then I have a baby that walks around picking everything up that it sees and puts it in its mouth. Put these two stories together. Like it is rough in my house sometimes as you see the baby reaching for the poo and you're like, no! But we're all born without wisdom. We're all born without a knowledge of how the world works. And through trials, through facing things, we get an idea of the way things are supposed to happen, the way things are supposed to work. And one of the things as a parent that you do is you put your kids in stressful situations that are outside of what they can do, but while you're there, so you can help them through the thing. So when you're helping your kid ride a bike, you're there with them. You put the training wheels and they ride along with it. This is actually like right now, we're talking with the kids like, are you guys ready to learn to ride bikes? And like, yeah, we want to do that. So I'm thinking through how I'm going to do this. You start with the training wheels so they get the pedaling down, just a little bit of balance. Then you take the wheels off, and so then you're holding the back of it. And so they're in that stress of like trying to learn to balance, but I'm there, I've got it. And then eventually you get to that point in time where you let go, and then your son jumps off into the fire hydrant and knocks out his 2 front teeth, and you have to go to the dentist. Like, I'm about to be in that phase of life where that stuff's going to happen. For me, like, when I was learning to ride a bike, I would just, like, re-riding, like, I did it, and then I would just jump into a bush. Like, I did it! No, just stop doing that. Just crash like a man. Like, but you train them to do something that's a little bit dangerous, but you're there, so they're within the bounds that they can grow and figure out how it works. And that's what trials do for us. They help us understand the way the world works, and we can process through it better than we could otherwise. And once again, going back to that idea of not just being a fan of Jesus, but being the servant. And if you want to, that requires a full change in your perspective on how the world works and your understanding. So when we go through trials, it starts to break away our misconceptions so we can see clearly and have that wisdom of how the world actually works. It says this, he continues on, and he says, verse 9, the brother in humble circumstances, the brother in bad situations, ought to take pride in his high position. This gets pretty dense stuff. But the one who is rich should take pride in his low position because he will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant, it blossoms, falls, and the beauty it is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away even while he goes about his business. So that's a lot of poetic language that at first, like, I'm not a super metaphorical type person, so I read that and go, what did I just read? What he's saying is, trials teach us to stop putting so much hope in the things of this world. So the rich man, with all the stuff that he has, he's holding on to a bunch of things that fade away. They do not last. The person without all of that, they're not infatuated with all their stuff that they have. What he's saying is like, trials help us to give us a good perspective. Most of us have like these crazy like kung fu grips on things of this world and our comfort, and we're just grabbing tight onto things that do not last. They do not satisfy. We are not meant to turn to them for our joy and our base. Like, that's not supposed to be our foundation. Trials give us the wisdom to let go and stop clinging to all of this stuff that does not last. See, when we have a change of identity that comes with putting Christ in our life, it changes our priorities. It stops being about our comfort and all this stuff around us. Going back to pick on my son, since he's not here, so he's an easy target. But a lot of times when we look at children, they're like exaggerated versions of us because they're so young and they're processing through it all. So a couple days back, it's my wife's birthday. And our plan, with the sick Chloe and everything, our whole week went wacky. But in theory, we were supposed to be riding in the van to go get a nice dinner at Olive Garden. We're driving there, and my son just starts crying in the back. We're riding down the road, and I'm like, hey, actually, I didn't ask my wife. I was just like, put on some of her favorite songs since it's her birthday, and like go to a restaurant that she loves. My son just is in the back crying. We're like, what, man, what's going on with him? Like, this isn't good. Like, hey, buddy, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, man, did he get bullied at school? Like, what's happening? Is he in pain? Is he getting the fever? Is it like sinking in and he's like actually realizing fevers aren't so great? There's actually more to it than just getting to play video games. Is it like sinking in and we're almost to the restaurant? Like, buddy, like what's going on? I want to listen to different music. What? We have this moment, like, we both of us, like, turn, float our mouths, like, I can't laugh. I got a parent, can't laugh at my son right now. I'll save this story for my talk. Then it'll be pretty funny. Like, we have to, like, pause for a second, compose ourselves, like, buddy, this is not something you cry about. Like, this is not, like, you didn't even ask us to play different music. You didn't mention it. You just sat there so sad that you didn't get the exact song that you wanted, which would be the Frozen 2 soundtrack, that you're losing it. Some things never change. I've listened to it literally every day since the movie came out. Like, I have all the words memorized to the whole thing. Plus, the soundtrack has extra songs in it that weren't in the movie. And I have those ones memorized too, because we 4 or 5, 6 times every single day. And he didn't get to listen to it, and he just loses it. Now, he's a child. He's growing in maturity. He's like all this stuff. He's like, he's that growing up. But in its own little ways, we all do that stuff. We all have these ways where we care so much about stuff that just does not matter. Sometimes you have to see the extreme example of a child to like have your eyes opened to how bonkers some of the stuff that we do. See, pain and trials reveal our idols. Pain and trials, they reveal the idols in our life. My son, it's getting his way. Like, he just doesn't understand. Wait, I don't always get to pick the music. Wait, I don't always get to be the person that decides what we watch. And like, that's a thing that has to be plucked out of him. But I don't know what it is for you and where you're at. But the pain in life, the trials reveal to us those idols that each and every one of us have and we're working through. Just kind of think through it. If you woke up tomorrow and lost all of your hair? Would you be disappointed or would you be devastated? If you woke up and your PlayStation 4 wasn't working anymore, if your little baby brother steps on the Switch, snaps it in half, you can't play your Smash Bros anymore, or your Pokemon, whatever the Eevee or whatever it's called. If you lose the Switch, if you don't get into the college of your choice, if you don't get number one in Fortnite, is it devastating or is it disappointing? It's fine if you're disappointed, but it reveals the idols inside of our life. There's one more little point that he closes out on this. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because he has stood the test, and he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Last big idea on here that you get out of trials when you face those hard times is that trials turn our head to Christ. See, one part is you got to let go of the idol. You got to stop grabbing hold of things that don't last. And the other side to that is you need to look to Christ. And in the hardest of times, some people are crushed because they see everything they lost and they are still holding on, hoping that this world will satisfy them. And other people in that moment, it clears away the fog and they can see clearly and let go of this and look up to Christ. Or to put it another way, Christ plus nothing is everything. And everything plus Christ is nothing, or minus Christ is nothing. What's that wisdom that you need to get? It's that satisfaction, life is found in Christ, not in the things of this world, not in your comfort, not in getting to listen to the Frozen 2 soundtrack on the way to your mother's birthday. Like, it's all about him. For me, one of the pivotal things in my life is that my dad died when I was 20. That is not something I would have chosen to be what happened. I never really had an adult conversation with my father. He was a person that had a lot of issues and alcoholism, affairs. I wouldn't have chosen for him to die when I was 20. But that death, for me, kind of bottomed everything else out and cleared away the fog. And I'd been that fan my whole life. I'd been in church. I'd prayed to receive Christ. I did believe it. I had put my faith, but I was in fan mode until that point in time. And then I went back to the basics. What do I really believe? What really matters? And it's not my comfort. I believe that Jesus died for my sins. And if that's true, it changes everything. And it was in that process where my dad died, where I actually got plugged in at Hill Country Bible Church, Pflugerville. Started serving. One of the first youth pastors of the church, his name was Jason Smith. He became this mentor to me. Where did all of that come from? Where did it happen? It all started with the worst of things. My father dying. I don't say you should rejoice in trials. It's not this flippant like, yay, I'm happy. No, it's that deeper knowledge that God works in us through the worst of circumstances. And God can help free us from our grip on the things of this world and the idols in our life. And it can open our eyes that He is the true Savior. He is what satisfies. And when you understand that, suddenly everything changes. You guys can stand up.